The sun wasn't even fully up when Marcus Trenton pulled into the cracked asphalt lot of Trenton Automotive. The morning air still held that hush, a stillness reserved for men who rise before the world needs them. He parked his dusty Chevy Silverado in the same corner space he had for over a decade, back when he was a janitor mopping floors and changing light bulbs at someone else's showroom. Now, the building was his. Every square foot of it, but you wouldn't know that from the way he carried himself. Humble, understated, focused. He stepped out quietly, the creak of the truck door louder than anything else on the lot. His hoodie was simple, slate gray, the kind with a frayed cuff. From years of pulling sleeves back to get to work, his jeans were pressed, but not stiff. A faded black cap rested on his head, a small oil stain at the edge of the brim, a reminder of the hours he'd spent under the hoods of cars long before, signing any ownership papers. He didn't walk like a boss. He walked like a man who still had something to prove. Inside his backpack, a laptop, a few wrinkled invoices, and a tin container of smoked brisket, leftovers from last night's dinner with his wife, Candace. No grand declarations, no gold watches or luxury sneakers. Just brisket and work. The dealership's official signage hadn't changed yet. Northgate Auto Sales still hovered above the glass doors, a name that belonged to a man named Wallace who had retired and left town. But within a few days, the new acrylic letters would be drilled in. Trenton Automotive Group, number, grand rebranding. Marcus wasn't interested in erasing the past, just in building his own chapter. As he moved toward the front office, he noticed a car idling across the street, a silver sedan, maybe a Hyundai or a Mazda. He barely looked. People always slowed down to browse from a distance. That's what shiny new cars did. Caught eyes even when the lot was closed. He unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and disarmed the alarm with a quiet beep. The lights flickered on, humming softly as they filled the room with a sterile, familiar glow. He dropped his bag on the desk, stretched, then stepped back out to check the rear gate before his morning supplier arrived. Gerald, an old-school parts dealer who still insisted on handwritten receipts. That's when he saw the police cruiser. Dada didn't coast in slowly like someone just patrolling a route. It cut hard across the lot and parked sharply behind his truck. A second cruiser wasn't far behind. Two white officers exited, one tall, one stocky, both serious-faced, both watching him like a threat already assessed. Marcus frowned slightly. Still standing near the front entrance, his hands were by his sides, clearly visible. The taller cop spoke first. "You mind telling us what you're doing here?" Marcus tilted his head. "I'm opening up. This lot's closed. We got a report about someone prowling around." Marcus let out a short breath. Not a laugh, just disbelief. "I own this place. You got ID?" the shorter one asked. Marcus nodded toward the glass doors. "Inside, office is open." The taller one raised a hand. "Stay right there, hands visible." And just like that, Marcus felt the air change. It wasn't new. It wasn't even surprising. But it was still jarring, like hearing an old wound reopen with the pop of a stitch. His chest tightened. He didn't reach for anything. He didn't move. He knew the script. Back across the street, behind a yellowing curtain, 72-year-old Frank Delaney watched from a worn recliner. A retired welder, bitter, lonely, and quietly afraid of the world moving past him. He'd lived on that block since 1984, saw new faces, new names, new owners, and felt smaller each time the neighborhood shifted. So when he saw a black man, in a hoodie, walk onto the lot across the street, unlock a door, and walk out again, it didn't compute. It didn't match his memory of what owners looked like. "That ain't right," he mumbled. So he called it in. 911. "What's your emergency?" "Yeah, I live on Franklin Street, across from the car lot. Think someone's trying to break in. Are they forcing entry?" "No, but he's walking around like he owns the place." "And your description of the individual? Tall, black male, hoodie, backpack, just doesn't look right." Dispatch took the call with caution. No sirens were ordered. No lights, just a check. By the time officers Kyle Morton and Brett Swanson arrived at the lot, they were already convinced they were walking into something shady. Didn't matter that Marcus had keys, or that the alarm didn't go off, or that his name was stapled to every legal document in the filing cabinet inside. They saw the hoodie, the skin tone, the backpack. So when Marcus calmly repeated that he owned the business, it didn't change anything. "My name's Marcus Trenton," he said, slow and measured. "You can check the front desk. All the paperwork's there." "You got anything dangerous in the bag?" one asked. "Just my lunch, brisket, and a laptop." That was it. "Put your hands on the hood," the taller one said. Marcus blinked. "Excuse me, you heard me now." He turned slowly, palms spread flat against the warm silver hood of a Lexus parked just behind him. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. But inside, something cracked. Not loudly, quietly, like a whisper in a man's pride. Image prompt below. He heard the metal click behind him. Cold, final, the cuffs locked in place like a verdict. "We'll sort it at the station if we have to," Dugan muttered, his voice low, unconcerned. But help was already coming. Terrence just didn't know it yet. He stood motionless, hands on the hood of a Lexus he technically owned. The irony was so sharp it could cut steel. Just 3 days ago, He'd been at his desk finalizing financing for that very car, reviewing contracts, approving credit terms. Now, he was being bent over its glossy paint like a man caught shoplifting. The first cuff had been quick. The second one came with more force, snapped on tight enough to dig into skin. Officer Renshaw didn't speak. He just yanked Terrence's arm behind his back like he was dealing with a threat, not a man. Dugan hovered nearby, watching like Terrence might sprint off into the sunrise at any second, as if standing still wasn't already a statement. "I told you my name is Terrence Bledsoe," he said calmly. "Again, I'm not being difficult. If you'd just checked the office," Renshaw cut him off. "You think we're just gonna take your word for it, that you own the place?" Terrence didn't flinch. "You don't need to take my word. My name's on every document inside. The keys are on the front desk." Dugan leaned in, his voice dripping with suspicion. "You always come in this early, Mr. Bledsoe?" "Yeah," Terrence replied. "That's what owners do." The second cuff closed harder than the first. Renshaw jerked his arm slightly, just enough to send a message. "You watch your tone?" he growled. Terrence clenched his jaw, staring down at the gravel beneath the Lexus. The lot, his lot, felt distant now, like a place that had rejected him the moment he showed up in the wrong skin. He could still smell the citrus floor wax from last night. He'd stayed late to polish the showroom himself, out of habit, out of pride, out of love for what he built. But love didn't shield you from handcuffs. "You got ID?" Dugan asked suddenly. "In my backpack," Terrence said. "Or my wallet, jacket pocket, you can check." They didn't. Neither one even looked in the direction of the building. Their hands rested near their belts. Their eyes never left him. This wasn't about facts. It wasn't about crime. It was about control. "How you say you got this place?" Dugan asked. "Bought it from Grant Weatherford," Terrence answered. "Closed 3 weeks ago. Valeria Marino's my GM. She'll be here any minute." Renshaw smirked, eyes flicking over Terrence's hoodie. "You expect me to believe a guy dressed like you bought a dealership?" Terrence didn't reply. What was there to say? That prejudice wears a uniform now. That disbelief is stitched into the badge. A few feet away, his backpack still sat on the pavement where he'd dropped it. The zipper had popped open in the scuffle, exposing a folder marked, with the Lakeview Auto Group logo, ownership contracts inside, his name in blue ink. But no one bothered to look. In a parked Camry a few cars down, Deja McMillan watched it all unfold through a windshield spotted with yesterday's rain. She'd arrived early, like always, sat quietly, sipped from a paper cup, listened to a podcast, but the second she saw Terrence pushed up against the Lexus, her chest tightened. She knew that posture, that stillness, that quiet voice he used. When he was choosing calm over outrage, she hit record. Renshaw and Dugan hadn't seen her. Her phone camera stayed low, just enough of her face visible to confirm the witness. She didn't speak. Her heart hammered in her throat. With one hand, she sent a text to Valeria. "Something's wrong. Cops cuffed Mr. B out front. Come now." Back. At the glass entrance, Renshaw guided Terrence toward the door. His door. "You gonna let me open it?" Terrence asked flatly. "Or are you planning to kick it in and explain that to my insurance?" Renshaw didn't answer. He grabbed the handle. It was unlocked. Just like Terrence said, the lights were already on. Dugan muttered, "Stay right here. Don't move." Terrence raised an eyebrow. "Not like I got a choice, do I?" They left him. They're cuffed and humiliated, standing outside his own building while they went inside like men raiding a stash house. They weren't looking for proof of ownership. They were searching for justification. Anything to make this moment seem valid. But Valeria Moreno was already on the road, pedal down, hair undone, eyes wide with fury. She hadn't even finished feeding her dog when the text came through. She didn't pause, didn't grab a jacket, just keys in motion. 11 years she'd worked here. 5 owners, dozens of managers. She'd never once seen someone treat the team like Terrence did. He remembered birthdays. Without reminders, he called the janitor by name. And now someone had him cuffed on a lot he worked his whole life to earn. Back outside, Terrence stood still, burning wrists, a locked jaw. Renshaw and Dugan had walked in and out of the office twice. Still hadn't said a word to him. Inside, they flipped through folders like detectives on a drug bust. Shuffled drawers, scanned walls. "Do you find anything?" Dugan asked. "Contracts, name Bledsoe on the letterhead," Renshaw said with a shrug. "Could have printed it at Kinko's." Terrence let out a laugh. Dry, bitter. "You're looking right at the truth and still don't want to see it." Dugan stepped out. "You say something?" "Yeah," Terrence said. "I said you already found the proof. You just don't want it to count. That's different." Dugan's jaw tightened. "You keep mouthing off. We'll find more charges." "For what?" Terrence barked, finally letting the heat rise. "For showing up early, for owning something you didn't expect me to, for doing what every successful man before me has done." Before Dugan could respond, his radio crackled. "Be advised," dispatch said. "We have a second call confirming the individual may be the property owner. A Valeria Moreno is en route." She identified the subject by name. Renshaw turned. "What's that woman's on her way. Says he's the boss." Seconds later, a white SUV screeched into the lot. Door flew open before the engine stopped. Valeria didn't walk. She stormed officers. She shouted, "That's Terrence Bledsoe. He owns this dealership. He's my employer." Renshaw stepped forward, one hand out. "Ma'am, we're in the middle of no you're not. You're detaining a man for unlocking his own business. You see that badge on the window? The one with his name? That went up yesterday." She pushed past him, straight to Terrence. "You okay?" she whispered. He nodded. "Yeah, better now." She turned back to the officers. "First drawer on the left-hand side, there's a photo of the new ownership signing. That's Mr. Weatherford, and the man in the suit beside him. The one you cuffed, that's the owner." Renshaw hesitated. Duggan looked like he wanted to disappear. Still, they turned and walked inside. Slower now. No swagger, no command. Just damage control. Valeria stepped beside Terrence. "You want me to call someone?" "Already texted Denise," he said. "Told her not to come. Don't want her to see me like this." Inside, the officers finally found what they couldn't unsee. Contracts, licenses, official state filings. All with one name. Bledsoe. They stepped back out into the sunlight. Renshaw cleared his throat. "We're gonna remove the cuffs. There's been a miscommunication, not an apology." Duggan unlocked the restraints. The metal popped loose. Terrence winced and pulled his arms forward, wrists raw and red. Valeria stared at them. "Not even a sorry." "We followed procedure," Renshaw mumbled. "We were responding to a report. Procedure didn't include asking a single question." She snapped. The officers didn't reply. They turned, got in their cruisers, drove off. No names offered. No forms filled. Just silence. Terrence stood there a moment longer, breathing through the sting. Then he bent down, picked up his backpack, opened the front door, and stepped inside his business. Behind him, Deja was still, filming, and what her phone captured that would go farther than any of them imagined. Deja McMillan had never gone viral before, but she was about to. Most of her social media feed was calm. Snapshots of novels with underlined quotes, blurry mid-action shots of her younger brother scoring three-pointers, and snippets from podcasts about mindset and motivation. But when Deja watched Terrence being cuffed outside the place he built from scratch, his own dealership, something inside her snapped. She didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She just lowered her phone below the dashboard, hit record, and held it steady from the front seat of her old Camry. Her breathing was shallow. Her fingers were stiff. Every time Officer Renshaw raised his voice or jerked Terrence's arm, her stomach twisted into knots. She wanted to get out, to yell, to do something. But she knew better. She knew what happened to people who looked like her when they stepped out of line. So she stayed, she documented, and she waited. When Valeria finally arrived and lit up the scene with a voice like a courtroom verdict, Deja felt her lungs expand again. She stopped recording. Her hands were trembling, not from fear anymore, but something hotter, something heavier, rage. She didn't add a caption or emoji. No hash. She just sent the video to Terrence's work number and stepped out of her car. Inside, Terrence sat behind his desk, pressing a cold can of Dr. Pepper to the angry red mark on his wrist. Valeria stood stiff nearby, arms crossed, staring blankly out the window like she was still watching it happen in her mind. When Deja walked in, both of them turned. She didn't fumble her words. "I recorded it," she said quietly, "from my car. I didn't know what else to do." Terrence didn't say anything right away. He just looked at her, eyes heavy, not surprised, not even angry, just tired. "You did right," he finally said. "Thank you." Valeria nodded slowly. "That video might be the only reason they hesitate next time." Deja hesitated, then added, "I didn't post it, not without your go-ahead. I sent it to you, just in case." He gave her a soft, weathered smile. "I appreciate that." At the far end of the lot, a new finance hire named Rami Elston walked in. He hadn't seen what happened, but he felt it the second he stepped through the door. Valeria didn't greet him like usual. Deja's face was taut, and Terrence, the proud, straight-backed man they'd all admired, looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. Rami quietly backed toward the entrance again. "I'm gonna grab a coffee," he said. Valeria replied without looking up. "Take your time. We're not opening on schedule today." The news traveled fast. By noon, the entire team knew. No announcements, no meetings, just murmurs from the break room, text threads buzzing, and Deja whispering the story when someone asked. They all had questions, but no one wanted to say them out loud. How didn't the officers know who he was? Why didn't they check? What if Valeria hadn't shown up? Terrence didn't answer any of it. He just sat in his office, eyes fixed on the framed loan agreement on the wall, the cabinets, the same backpack lunch he hadn't touched. His wrists still burned. That afternoon, he finally watched the video. Deja had captured nearly everything. The approach, the tone in their voices, his calm explanation repeated 3 times. "I own this place." The moment his arm was wrenched back, the instant Valeria stormed in with the force of a closing argument. At the end, the camera shook just slightly when Deja exhaled. But the footage, crystal clear, real, raw, undeniable. He replayed it. Then again Valeria appeared in the doorway thinking of posting it. "I don't know," he said. "What's the point? It shows what happened. That's not always enough." She didn't push, she just stayed, silent but present. Later that evening, after the last employee clocked out and the building dimmed, Deja uploaded the video. No tags, no filters, no theatrics. Just a caption. This is Terrence Bledsoe. He owns this dealership. He was cuffed outside of it. This is America, 22:05 by sunrise. It had over 80,000 views. Deja woke to hundreds of new followers and inboxes full of messages, most from strangers thanking her. One from a local paper asking for an interview. She didn't respond. This wasn't about her. Terrence, meanwhile, hadn't even touched his phone. He followed the same morning rhythm he always did, dragging the trash out from the service bay, checking inventory logs, brewing the terrible office coffee. He needed the routine. He needed something to feel normal, but nothing was normal. The glances from his staff were longer, more loaded, not pitying, just watchful, like they'd seen him for the first time, like they were recalibrating, because what happened to him could happen to any of them. At 9:15, Valeria knocked again. You check your name online yet? She asked. Terrence looked up. Nope, I'm trying to keep my blood pressure down. She walked in, laid a tablet on his desk. Too late. He tapped the screen. The video had gone wide. TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, even Reddit. Clips were everywhere. Some short and captioned, others full length. Someone, probably Deja, had uploaded the full 2-minute version, the one where you could hear him say it, I own this place. The one where the click of the cuffs sounded like thunder. He scrolled through the comments. Unbelievable. They didn't even check first. This is exactly why people stopped trusting law enforcement. Been in his shoes. But nobody was recording. Owning something still doesn't protect you. A few trolls showed up. They always did. But their voices got buried. I didn't want this, Terrence muttered, rubbing his temples. I know, Valeria said, but people did. What now? Do I do interviews? Or just stay quiet and wait for the next viral thing? That's your choice. But if you stay silent, someone else will speak for you. He knew she was right, but that didn't make it easier. The thought of cameras, microphones, people twisting his tone, dissecting his every blink, it exhausted him. He wasn't trying to be a martyr, he just wanted to sell cars, build a name, go home to Denise and their daughter, watch the Rockets lose another game, not explain why his wrist still ached. That afternoon, while standing behind the sales desk, a customer walked in, an older black man in a maroon tracksuit. He walked straight up to Terrence. You the one in that video? Terrence hesitated. Yeah, the man offered his hand. Name's Louis. I'm in the market for a truck. But more than that, I wanted to meet you. Terrence blinked. Why? Because it takes strength to keep calm when someone's trying to humiliate you, publicly. You held your ground. You didn't shout. You didn't swing. That takes strength. Terrence didn't know what to say. He shook the man's hand. I'll take a look at that Silverado outside, Louis said, but I'm buying from you. Not out of pity. Out of principle. Terrence watched as he walked off to browse. Out front, a small group of people had gathered. No signs of a protest. No chance of just people quietly holding signs. One read, We see you, Mr. Bledsoe. But Terrence knew seeing wasn't enough. The next step was harder. Deciding what to say next. By week's end, he couldn't go to the store without someone recognizing him. A cashier gave him free water and whispered, My nephew went through the same. A passing driver honked and gave a salute. A college student handed him a handwritten note. I'm learning, thanks to you. But all that attention came with a cost he hadn't slept in days. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the cold steel again. Heard Renshaw's voice echoing in his head. What are you doing here? His wife Denise begged him to take a day off. Just one. But he wouldn't, because if he stayed home, it would feel like they'd taken something from him, and he wasn't ready to hand that over. Inside the dealership, something subtle had shifted. His people, Deja, Rami, even the tech guys in the back, they carried themselves differently. Straighter backs, sharper eyes. Because they'd seen what happened, and more importantly, they'd seen how he responded. Not with fire, not with fury, but with presence. And that might have been the loudest answer of all. Even days later, the weight of it hadn't lifted. On Tuesday, Terrence's phone lit up with a number he didn't recognize. The voice on the other end introduced himself carefully, Detective Rowan Godfrey from Internal Affairs. Every word from the man came wrapped in caution, like he was navigating a minefield. I'd like to set up a time to speak with you, Mr. Bledsoe, Godfrey said. We're conducting a review of the officer's actions. Terrence leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. You reviewing it because it's the right thing, or because a couple 100,000 folks already watched that video? There was a pause on the other end. Then it clipped both, sir. They scheduled the meeting for the next morning, but Terrence wasn't about to go in alone. He called Trina Belfort, the attorney who had helped him close the dealership deal. Smart, no nonsense. Always made him feel like a partner, not a client. Trina arrived the next day, in a crisp gray pantsuit and ballet flats. As they waited in the conference room, she didn't bother with small talk. They'll want this wrapped up and out of the news cycle, fast, she said. Expect phrases like policy violation or additional training, but don't expect anyone to take the fall unless they're forced to. I'm not trying to ruin lives, Terrence said quietly. I know, she replied, but you are allowed to defend your own. The meeting with Detective Godfrey dragged. His questions were deliberate, couched in legal insulation. He asked Terrence how he felt, what he heard, what he saw, whether he had been physically harmed, whether the officers used force beyond protocol. Terrence answered honestly, no embellishments, just the facts. At the end, Godfrey gave the classic bureaucratic farewell. We'll be in touch. Trina didn't even wait until they were out of the building before muttering under her breath. Translation: they're hoping this fades by Friday, but a did and single quotes T.Local News picked it up first. Channel 12 aired a segment titled Wrongfully Cuffed. Local business owner speaks out. From there, it spread like fire on dry grass. It wasn't just the footage anymore. It was op-eds, Twitter threads, radio discussions. Even the Chronicle ran a full-page Sunday spread on bias in professional spaces, and Terrence's name was front and center. And with attention came noise. People online were split. Some demanded he sue the department. Others wanted him to lead a movement. A few wanted blood officers fired, charges brought. Terrence. He wasn't sure what he wanted, but he knew it wasn't revenge. It was something deeper. Accountability, acknowledgement, a moment that said, we see you. That night, he and Denise sat on the back porch, the air still, the sky bruised with stars. I never asked for this, he said, voice low. She didn't answer at first, just handed him a mug of tea, warm between her hands. No, she said finally, but sometimes what happens to us ends up mattering more to others than it ever will to us. He looked over at her, eyes tired. You think I should say something? She nodded. You already did. Just finished the sentence. But Terrence knew, if he spoke now, publicly, there would be no turning back. By Friday, his face was everywhere. Good Morning Texas aired the footage. TikTok creators stitched the clip into duets. A high school teacher in San Diego used it in a lesson. Even a Houston rapper sampled his calm voice saying, I own this place, into a haunting beat that trended on SoundCloud. Still, Terrence hadn't spoken. No interviews, no statement, no camera time. He was waiting though. He wasn't sure for what. Maybe the right words. Maybe a different question. Valeria, his assistant, came in with a thick stack of printed emails. These came in today, she said. People want to stop by. Support the business. Shake your hand. One letter stood out. It was from a man named Lamar Briggs, who owned a no-frills barber shop in College Station. No social media. Just 6 chairs and a loyal clientele. It read, Brother, I can't afford to buy a car from you, but every man who sat in my chair this week heard what happened to you, and every one of them nodded. You're saying what we've all felt. Keep your head up. Terrence read the letter 3 times. Not out of disbelief, but out of gravity. The message pressed against his shoulders. Not as a burden, but as a calling. People didn't just see him anymore. They expected something from him. Mid-afternoon. He stepped out back for some air. He didn't smoke, but he held a cigarette, just to have something between his fingers. The wind stirred the dust near the loading ramp. 10 minutes later, Valeria joined him. 2 more interview requests, she said. One from Dallas, one from NPR. He didn't answer. Just watched a stray cat slide under the dumpster. What am I supposed to say? He asked finally. That being black and holding keys still makes some folks call the cops. She stayed. Quiet. I'm not trying to be anyone's hero. I just wanted to run a dealership. You still are, she said. Doesn't feel like it. She let the silence hang a moment. You don't need to be a hero. Just don't let them rewrite it. If you say nothing, they'll write their own version. Later that afternoon, Rami knocked on the office door. Mr. B, there's someone here asking for you. Not press. Just someone who saw the video. Terrence sighed. Already halfway to the door, in the showroom stood a middle-aged black woman, wearing a floral blouse and holding a manila envelope. You're Mr. Bledsoe, she asked. Yes, ma'am. I'm Regina Ellery. I teach U.S. history at Edison High in Pasadena. He shook her hand, puzzled. I used to tell my students about men like you, she said. Biters, builders, people who had to prove twice as much just to get half as far. She held out the envelope. This week, I showed them your story, and they understood it without me explaining. These are letters from my class. They wanted you to know. They see you. That night, Terrence opened the envelope. Nearly 30 handwritten notes. Some neat, others messy. One with a heart drawn in the corner. Every single one, honest. One read. When they cuffed you, I saw my uncle. When you stood tall, I saw who I want to become. He sat with those letters for a long time. Then, just past 2 a.m., he turned on his phone's front camera, set it on his desk, hit record. No script, no plan. My name is Terrence Bledsoe, he began. I own Lakeview Auto Group in LaPorte, Texas, and what happened to me last week. Wasn't unusual. It was just captured. He looked down. I stayed calm because I've had practice. Practice explaining myself. Practice being safe. But I'm tired of practicing. I just want to be. The video was 3 minutes long. By dawn, 500,000 people had watched it. The silence broke and everything changed. Did they ever say sorry? Terrence shook his head. Not once. The boy nodded slowly. They should have. That moment stuck with Terrence more than anything else. Back at the dealership, life began settling into rhythm again. Sure, the viral attention had brought in more business, but it also brought more questions. Reporters lingered. Opportunists called. Few even asked if he'd ever consider running for office. Terrence just laughed. I sell cars, he'd say, not dreams. Still, the impact of it all lingered. That's when he launched a new initiative. At Lakeview, the ownership track a mentorship program for young black professionals interested in auto sales, finance, or dealership operations. Once a month, they'd meet, shadow the team, and learn what it really meant to own something, not just work there. When Valeria asked him why he started it, Terrence didn't hesitate. Because I don't want the next Terrence to get cuffed. In his own parking lot, the first session had 4 kids, then 10, then 23. Each one came with questions, each one left with a notebook, a name badge, and a reminder. You belong in the room even when they act like you don't. Terrence wasn't trying to change the world, just his corner of it. And for the first time in weeks, he felt like he really was. But even then, something was still unsaid. So one night, after everyone had gone home, and the security lights blinked on across the lot, he sat alone in his back office. No script, no fancy lighting, no production crew, just his phone, his desk, and the memory of the day he was cuffed right outside that window. He hit record. I've been quiet most of my life, he began. Taught to keep my head down, do the work, stay out of trouble. Taught that if I worked twice as hard, I might get half as far and should be grateful for even that. He looked down for a beat, then back at the camera. But when I bought this place, I didn't do it just for me. I did it for the ones who came before me and weren't allowed to. For the folks who paved the road but never got to drive it. He paused. You've seen the video. You saw what happened. I didn't post it for attention. I posted it so people would understand. Success doesn't make you safe. Having keys, contracts, and ownership doesn't protect you from being seen as a threat. Not to everyone. His voice didn't crack, but it carried weight. They didn't see an owner. They saw a hoodie. They saw skin and assumed the rest. Then, his tone shifted softer but more certain. But what came after? That's what I want to talk about. The letters, the classrooms, the strangers who showed up not with judgment, but with solidarity. That's what gives me hope. He leaned back slightly. I'm not here to call anyone out, but I am here to remind you, if you care about fairness, your silence matters as much as your voice. If you care about justice, you can't only speak when it's easy. He reached into a drawer and pulled out one of the handwritten letters. Kalen's. ***. Some kid asked if they ever apologized. They didn't, and maybe they won't. But that's not the ending. The ending is what we choose to do after the damage is done. ***. He folded the letter gently and set it down. This is a car lot. We sell cars here. But lately, we've been selling something else too. Dignity, integrity, a reason to believe we don't have to keep repeating the same story. A small, quiet smile. So if you've ever been made to feel like you didn't belong, know this, you do. If they made you feel small, remember who you are. And if they try to write your story without your permission, take the pen back. He reached forward and stopped the recording. The next morning, he posted it. No captions, no number, edits, just the truth. The views didn't matter. The reach didn't matter. He hadn't filmed it for clicks. He filmed it to let go. This time, the response was quieter. No trending tags, no headlines. Just a steady stream of messages. Somewhere, only 2 words. Thank you. Others came in paragraphs. A few came from police officers saying they saw themselves in the video and weren't proud of that. Back at the dealership, business carried on. The mentorship program grew. The staff found a new rhythm. Customers still mentioned the video but less and less each week. What remained was something deeper than buzz. Trust. One afternoon, Terrence stood outside watching one of the mentees walk a couple through a financing plan. He didn't interrupt, just watched. Then turned and went back inside. He'd started the year as just another man trying to run a business. He ended it as something else, not a symbol, not a victim, just a man who refused to let the world decide what kind of story he was allowed to live.